The stars looked the same as always when Captain Jake Morrison checked the navigation screen. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, was 3 months into a routine survey mission at the edge of explored space. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and stretched in his captain's chair. Survey missions were important but rarely exciting. They mapped new systems, checked for resources, and made sure no dangers lurked in unexplored regions. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Lisa Brooks called from the pilot's seat. Her fingers moved quickly across her console. "It's a distress signal, but the frequency is not human." Jake sat up straight. "Can you identify it?" "Negative, sir. It's definitely artificial, though. Someone built that transmission." Lisa pulled up more data on her screen. "The signal is coming from near that red star, the one that's dying." Ben Rodriguez, the ship's engineer, walked onto the bridge carrying a coffee mug. "A distress signal out here? That's unusual." "Very unusual," Jake agreed. He thought for a moment. Protocol said they should report it and wait for instructions. But a distress signal meant someone was in trouble. Someone who might die while they waited for permission to help. "Lisa, how long to reach that position?" "About 4 hours at full speed." "Ben, can the engines handle it?" The engineer nodded. "She'll hold together. But Captain, we don't know what we're flying into. Could be dangerous." Jake made his decision. "We're going to help. Whoever sent that signal needs assistance." Lisa, set course. "Ben, make sure our shields are ready. And someone wake up Amy. If we're rescuing aliens, we'll need our xenobiologist." The Horizon's Edge turned toward the dying red star. As they got closer, the sensors showed more details. There was definitely a ship caught in the star's gravity well. The vessel was slowly being pulled toward the star's surface. Dr. Amy Walsh arrived on the bridge, still pulling her hair into a ponytail. "You called for me?" "We have a situation," Jake explained, pointing at the screen. "Unknown alien vessel trapped by that star's gravity. We're going to attempt a rescue." Amy studied the readings. "That ship design is incredible. I've never seen anything like it. The technology looks far more advanced than ours." "If they're so advanced, why do they need our help?" Lisa asked. "Their ship might be damaged," Ben suggested. "Advanced technology still breaks." As they approached, the situation became clearer. The alien vessel had taken severe damage. Parts of its hull were torn open and its engines flickered weakly. The dying star's radiation was intense. Jake could see the strain on his own ship's systems. "We're being hailed," Lisa announced. "Audio only. Put it through." A series of clicks and whistles filled the bridge. Then surprisingly words in English. "Human vessel, you must leave this area. The radiation will destroy your inferior shielding. We are already lost. Do not sacrifice yourselves." Jake leaned forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Horizon's Edge. We're here to help. Can you tell us how many survivors you have?" There was a pause. Then the voice returned, sounding surprised. 7 survivors remain. But your technology cannot withstand the radiation levels required to reach us. Your shields are too weak. Please go while you still can." "We'll be the judge of what we can withstand," Jake said firmly. "Ben, can we get close enough to dock?" The engineer was already calculating. "Not for long. The radiation will start damaging our systems in about 10 minutes. We'd have maybe 5 minutes to evacuate their crew before we have to pull back." "That's not much time," Amy said quietly. "It'll have to be enough." Jake stood up. "Lisa, bring us in as close as you can. Ben, you're with me. We're taking the shuttle. It's smaller and more maneuverable. Amy, prepare the medical bay for injured aliens. We don't know what condition they'll be in." "Jake, this is crazy," Lisa said, worry clear in her voice. "Probably," Jake admitted with a slight smile. "But it's the right kind of crazy. If someone was stranded and in danger, I'd want them to try to save me too." The shuttle separated from the Horizon's Edge and headed toward the damaged alien vessel. Jake piloted while Ben monitored their shields. The radiation levels climbed higher and higher. Warning alarms began to sound. "Shields at 60%, Ben reported. 50%. 40%. "Just a little closer," Jake muttered, fighting the controls as the star's gravity tried to pull them in. Almost there. They docked with a hard clang. Jake and Ben pulled on their helmets and moved to the airlock. On the other side, they found the aliens waiting. Jake's first look at the Velkari took his breath away. They stood about 7 feet tall with 4 arms and tough plated skin that looked almost like insect armor. Their faces were alien but expressive, with large multifaceted eyes. "Quickly, please," one of them said, its voice translator working perfectly. "We are grateful, but you must not die for us." Jake and Ben helped the aliens through the airlock. One of them was clearly injured, supported by two others. They moved as fast as they could, but the injured one was struggling. Shields at 20%, Ben's radio crackled. "We need to go, Captain." Jake looked at the injured alien. She was taller than the others, and her armor plating had decorative patterns that suggested importance. "Can you walk faster?" "Go," the injured one said weakly. "Save the others." "Leave me." "Not happening," Jake said firmly. He moved beside her and took some of her weight. "Ben, help me. We're not leaving anyone behind." Together, they got all 7 aliens into the shuttle. Jake practically threw himself into the pilot's seat and fired the engines. The shuttle pulled away from the dying vessel just as another explosion tore through its hull. "Shields at 5%, Ben reported. "We're not going to make it back to the ship. We'll lose shielding before we clear the radiation zone." Jake's mind raced. Then he had an idea. "Ben, can you route power from our weapon systems to the shields? That'll leave us completely defenseless. We don't need to shoot anything. We need to survive." "Do it." Ben's fingers flew across the controls. "Power routing now. Shields climbing to 15%, 20%. The shuttle shook violently as they pushed through the worst of the radiation. The control panel sparked and several systems went offline. But the shields held. Barely. They docked with the horizon's edge, and Lisa immediately set course away from the dying star. Amy was waiting in the medical bay with whatever supplies she thought might help with alien injuries. The Velkari survivors looked around the human ship with obvious curiosity. "Thank you," the tallest one said to Jake. "We are in your debt. Though I must ask, why did you risk your lives for strangers? Your species is unknown to us. We had no alliance, no treaty, no obligation." Jake shrugged. "Where I come from, someone needs help, you help them. It's that simple." The alien tilted her head in a gesture that seemed to indicate confusion. "Nothing is that simple. Every action has cost and benefit. You gained nothing from this rescue and risked everything." "We gained 7 people who get to keep living," Jake said. "That seems like a pretty good trade to me." Amy began examining the injured alien with careful, gentle movements. The Velkari watched her work with fascination. "Your medical technology is very primitive," one of them observed. "Yet your doctor shows great care." "I'm doing my best," Amy said, not offended by the comment. "Your biology is different from anything I've studied. I'm having to improvise." "You are using creativity to overcome your limitations," the injured alien said softly. "This is unexpected." Over the next few hours, Amy worked to stabilize all the survivors. The horizon's edge set course for the nearest Velkari outpost, which the aliens identified on the star charts. Jake learned that the injured alien was Princess Lyra Shah, third in line to the Velkari throne. She had been traveling on a diplomatic mission when their ship suffered a critical systems failure near the unstable star. "A princess," Ben whispered to Jake. "We rescued alien royalty." "We rescued people who needed help," Jake corrected. "The royal part is just a detail." But as they traveled toward Velkari space, Jake noticed Princess Lyrisha watching him and his crew with intense interest. She asked many questions about human culture, human history, and human decision-making processes. Her questions were thoughtful and probing. "Your species acts on emotion," she said once. "You made an illogical choice to save us. Among my people, such choices are not made. We act according to our genetic programming and our assigned roles in society." "That sounds very organized," Jake said carefully. "But what if your programming tells you to do something you don't want to do?" "Want?" Princess Lyrishaw's eyes seemed to shine with something Jake couldn't identify. "We do not consider wants. We consider duty, role, and purpose. Wants are inefficient." "Sounds lonely," Jake said quietly. The princess did not respond, but something in her expression changed. For the first time, Jake wondered if the Velkari were as different from humans as they claimed. Maybe everyone, no matter how alien, understood loneliness. As the horizon's edge approached Velkari space, Jake felt satisfied with their mission. They had saved lives and made first contact with a new species. It seemed like a successful journey. He had no idea that his simple act of kindness was about to change the fate of 2 species and challenge the foundations of an ancient empire. The Velkari outpost appeared on their screens like a massive crystal structure floating in space. It was beautiful and intimidating at the same time. Jake had expected a simple thank you, maybe some supplies for their damaged shuttle, and then safe passage back to human space. What he got instead was very different. As soon as the horizon's edge docked, armed Velkhari guards surrounded them. A tall official with deep purple plating approached Jake with cold, formal movements. "Captain Jake Morrison, you and your crew are detained for unauthorized interference with Velkhari royalty. You will remain here until the High Court decides your fate." Jake stared in disbelief. "We saved their lives. Your princess would be dead if we hadn't helped." "That does not change the law," the official said without emotion. "Contact with royalty requires proper authorization and diplomatic channels. You violated our protocols." Princess Lyra Shah stepped forward, her injury still causing her to move carefully. "Administrator Kelvrath, these humans acted in good faith. They could not have known our laws. The law does not require knowledge, Princess. It requires obedience." The administrator gestured to the guards. "Take them to the diplomatic quarters. They are not to leave until the High Court convenes." The crew was escorted to a section of the outpost that was clearly designed for guests. The rooms were comfortable, with beds adjusted for human size and environmental controls set to Earth-normal conditions. But the locked doors and guards outside made it clear they were prisoners, not guests. "This is unbelievable," Lisa said, pacing back and forth in the common area they shared. "We save their princess and they lock us up?" "Their culture is very different from ours," Amy said, sitting at a table and reviewing her notes on Velkhari biology. "Everything seems to be about rules and roles and proper procedures." Ben checked the door for the 10th time. "How long do you think they'll keep us here?" Jake sat down heavily. "I don't know, but getting angry won't help. We need to be patient and hope Princess Lyra Shah can convince them to let us go." Days passed slowly. The Velkhari provided food that was nutritious but bland. They had access to entertainment systems, but everything was in Velkhari language. The crew tried to stay positive, but being locked up wore on everyone's nerves. On the 5th day, Princess Lyra Shah visited them. The guards let her through without question. She looked much healthier now, her injury healed by advanced Velkhari medicine. "I apologize for this situation," she said, settling into a chair that seemed too small for her large frame. "I have been arguing for your immediate release, but the bureaucracy moves slowly. The High Court will not convene for at least 3 more weeks." "3 weeks?" Lisa exclaimed. "We have families back home, jobs, lives." "I understand your frustration," Princess Lyra Shah said, "but I hope to use this time productively. I wish to learn more about your species. If I understand humans better, perhaps I can argue more effectively for your freedom." Jake studied her carefully. "You're really just curious about us, aren't you? This isn't just about getting us released." The princess's mandibles moved in what might have been a smile. "You are very perceptive, Captain Morrison." "Yes, I am curious. Your actions during the rescue confused me. My entire life, I have been taught that every being acts according to their genetic programming and their place in society. But you acted in a way that violated both logic and self-interest. I need to understand why." Over the following weeks, Princess Lyra Shah visited them every day. At first, the conversations were formal and awkward. But gradually, both sides relaxed. Jake told her about Earth, about human history, about the wars and peace that shaped their species. He explained concepts like democracy, individual rights, and personal freedom. "You allow your citizens to choose their own occupations?" Princess Lyra Shah asked one day, clearly amazed. "But how do you ensure efficiency? What if everyone chooses the same role?" "They don't," Jake explained. "People have different interests and talents. Some want to be doctors, some want to be engineers, some want to be artists. We follow our passions." "Passion." The princess repeated the word like it was foreign. "This is emotion-driving decision-making. It sounds chaotic." "Sometimes it is," Jake admitted with a laugh. "But it also means people work at jobs they love. They create art because it moves them. They explore space because they're curious. Everything we do comes from internal desire, not external programming." Amy joined the conversation, eager to share her knowledge. "Among humans, we believe that consciousness means the ability to choose. If your choices are predetermined by genetics, are you really conscious or just a very complex machine?" Princess Lyra Shah fell silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "We are taught that consciousness is awareness, not choice. We are aware of our roles and fulfill them. That is enough." "Is it, though?" Jake asked gently. "Are you happy?" "Happy?" The princess seemed confused by the question. "I do not understand. I am effective. I fulfill my function. Happiness is not relevant." Lisa leaned forward. But do you ever want something different? Do you ever dream about a life that isn't predetermined? The princess stood up abruptly and walked to the window. Outside, other Velkari moved with precise, efficient movements through the station corridors. Everyone had a purpose and a place. It looked organized and peaceful, but Jake saw something in Princess Lyrishaw's posture that spoke of loneliness. Sometimes, the princess admitted quietly, I observe the younger Velkari before their roles are assigned. They move with less purpose but more variation. Then they receive their genetic analysis, learn their function, and become efficient. And I wonder if something beautiful is lost in that moment. It is, Jake said softly. You're losing possibility. The wonder of not knowing what you might become. Princess Lyrishaw turned to face him. Is that wonder worth the chaos? The uncertainty? The possibility of choosing wrong? Yes, all four humans said together, then laughed at their synchronized response. Ben explained, because even wrong choices teach us something. Every mistake makes us wiser. Every failure makes success sweeter. If everything is predetermined, nothing feels earned. The princess sat back down and they continued talking late into the night. Jake shared music from Earth, playing everything from classical symphonies to rock and roll. The princess listened with fascination, her body responding to rhythms in ways that suggested emotion was not as absent from Velkari as their culture claimed. On another day, Jake taught her to play chess. The princess was brilliant at strategy, but she struggled with the concept that there was no single perfect move in every situation. You're telling me that the best choice depends on my opponent's psychology? She asked incredulously. Exactly, Jake said, moving his knight. Chess isn't just about logic. It's about understanding your opponent, predicting their reactions, sometimes making moves that seem illogical to throw them off balance. This is manipulation. No, this is interaction. We influence each other. Every relationship works this way. You say something, I respond. My response changes your next statement. We're constantly creating each other through our choices. Princess Lyrishaw stared at the chessboard for a long time. Your species is exhausting, she finally said. But there was something like admiration in her voice. The most significant moment came 3 weeks into their detention. Alarms suddenly blared through the station. Armed insurgents had breached the outer defenses, seeking to kidnap Princess Lyrishaw for political leverage. The station descended into chaos. The guards fled their post, rushing to defensive positions. Jake's crew suddenly had an opportunity to escape. The door was unlocked, the confusion would cover their movements, and their ship was still docked. This is our chance, Lisa said urgently. We can get to the horizon's edge and leave. But Jake was already moving toward the sound of weapons fire. The princess is in danger. Jake, she's not our responsibility, Ben protested. We need to save ourselves. I'm not leaving her, Jake said firmly. You all get to the ship. I'll catch up. Amy grabbed a medical kit. I'm coming with you. She might be injured. Lisa and Ben looked at each other. Then Lisa sighed. Well, we can't let you two have all the fun. Come on, Ben, let's go save a princess. They found Princess Lyrisha cornered by 3 insurgents in a corridor. Her ceremonial guards were down, and she was defending herself with whatever she could find. Despite her size and strength, she was outnumbered. Ben grabbed a maintenance tool from the wall, jury-rigging it into a makeshift weapon. Hey, over here, he shouted at the insurgents. The element of surprise gave them an advantage. Lisa used her pilot's reflexes to trip one insurgent. Amy threw medical supplies that exploded into blinding foam. Ben swung his improvised weapon with desperate courage. And Jake positioned himself between the princess and her attackers, using tactics he learned in basic training that suddenly seemed very important. The fight was messy and terrifying. Jake took a hit that cracked 2 ribs. Lisa got a nasty cut across her arm. But they held the position until station security arrived and overwhelmed the insurgents. As the medics treated the wounded, Princess Lyrishaw stood in the center of the corridor, looking at Jake and his crew. Her expression was complex, showing emotions that no Velkari was supposed to feel. You. The royal palace on the Velkari homeworld was even more impressive than the outpost. Towers of crystalline material reached toward the sky, each one pulsing with soft light. Jake and his crew stood in the grand reception hall, surrounded by hundreds of Velkari officials and nobles. Everyone was staring at them with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. Queen Siravel sat on a throne that looked like it grew from the floor itself. She was larger than most Velkari, her plating a deep purple-black that spoke of age and authority. Her eyes fixed on Jake with an intensity that made him want to step backward. He forced himself to stand still and meet her gaze. "So," the queen said, her voice echoing through the hall, "you are the human who presumes to court my daughter." "Your Majesty," Jake began carefully. "With respect, I didn't presume anything. Your daughter made a choice. I'm just trying to honor that choice." Murmurs rippled through the assembled Velkari. The queen raised one hand and silence fell immediately. "My daughter has been influenced by your strange human ideas. Choice, passion, freedom. These concepts have corrupted her judgment. However, I cannot simply dismiss her declaration. Our laws, ancient and unchanging, provide a path for this situation." Princess Lyra Shah stepped forward. "Mother, the courtship trials are the only way," the queen interrupted coldly. "If Captain Morrison truly wishes to join our royal family, he must prove his worth through the trials. 3 challenges that test physical capability, strategic thinking, and cultural understanding. These trials were designed for Velkari genetics, Captain Morrison. No outsider has ever attempted them. No one has tried in 3,000 years because the genetic pairing system made them unnecessary." Jake looked at his crew. Lisa's face showed worry. Ben looked concerned. Amy was studying the Velkari around them, her scientist brain working on the problem. Then Jake looked at Princess Lyra Shah. She stood with formal posture, but he could see fear in her eyes. Fear that he would refuse. Fear that her choice would be dismissed as meaningless. "I accept the trials," Jake said clearly. The queen's mandibles clicked together sharply. "You do not understand what you are accepting. These trials will expose your weaknesses, human. They will prove that some barriers between species cannot be crossed." "Maybe," Jake said. "Or maybe they'll prove that barriers only exist because we accept them." The first trial took place in a massive zero-gravity chamber. Jake floated at the entrance wearing a suit that the Velkari had provided. It fit poorly, designed for their 4-armed bodies rather than his 2-armed frame. The chamber stretched ahead of him like a maze of obstacles, platforms, and hazards. "The trial begins when you enter," the proctor announced. "You must navigate from this entrance to the far exit. Physical contact with red obstacles will end the trial in failure. Time limit is 10 minutes. Jake pushed off and entered the maze. Almost immediately, he understood the problem. The obstacles were positioned for Velkari reach and strength. Platforms were too far apart for human jumps. Grips required 4 hands to hold safely. The entire course assumed capabilities he simply didn't have. He crashed into a red obstacle within 2 minutes. Failure. The assembled Velkari nobles watched from the observation windows, their expressions showing what might have been satisfaction. Jake tried again. And again. Each time he learned something new about the course. Each time he failed a little bit later. By his 10th attempt he was exhausted. His muscles ached. His crew looked miserable watching him struggle. "Jake, maybe you should stop," Lisa called from the observation area. "This isn't fair. The course isn't designed for humans." "Life isn't fair," Jake called back, floating back to the start. "But we keep trying anyway." Princess Lyra Shah watched from a private balcony with her mother. "He will destroy himself attempting this," the queen observed. "His body cannot handle the strain. Perhaps you should release him from this obligation." "He won't quit," the princess said softly. "I am beginning to understand that about humans. They don't accept predetermined outcomes." Jake attempted the course again and again. By his 15th try, something changed. He wasn't trying to complete the course like a Velkari anymore. He was finding his own path. Where they would use strength, he used momentum. Where they would grab with multiple hands, he used his whole body. Where they would jump, he pushed off walls at angles. His movements became a dance of human improvisation. When he crossed the finish line, the timer showed 9 minutes and 53 seconds. The observation chamber fell absolutely silent. Several Velkari officials checked their instruments multiple times, unable to believe what they had seen. Queen Siravel stood slowly. The first trial is passed, barely. The second trial took place in a strategy room. Jake sat before a holographic display showing a space battle simulation. Dozens of ships moved across a star system, representing a defensive fleet under his command. The proctor explained the scenario. An overwhelming enemy force was approaching. Jake's fleet was outnumbered 3-1. His supply lines were cut. Reinforcements would not arrive in time. The purpose of this trial, the proctor said, is to demonstrate grace in accepting inevitable defeat. You must show that you understand your limitations and can retreat with dignity intact. All previous participants have surrendered when the casualties reached acceptable minimums. Jake studied the tactical display. He saw what the trial intended. It was designed to teach that some battles couldn't be won, that accepting fate was wisdom. But Jake's human mind saw something else. He saw possibility where the Velkari saw inevitability. What if I don't retreat? Jake asked. The proctor seemed surprised by the question. Then you will lose your entire fleet. That is the predetermined outcome. Unless it's not, Jake muttered, his fingers working the controls. He started making moves that horrified the watching Velkari strategists. He split his fleet in ways that violated every doctrine they taught. He sent half his ships on what looked like a suicide run, directly at the enemy's strongest position. The Velkari in the observation room muttered about foolish human tactics, but Jake wasn't following their playbook. He was gambling on human unpredictability. The simulation's enemy AI was programmed to respond to logical Velkari tactics. Jake's illogical approach confused it. His suicide run ships drew the enemy into a pursuit pattern that exposed their flanks. His remaining forces hit those exposed flanks with everything they had. Ships exploded in the simulation. Jake lost 60% of his fleet, but he achieved the objective that the simulation said was impossible. The enemy was defeated, scattered, the system was held. The strategy room erupted in chaos. Velkari officers argued loudly. This wasn't how the trial was supposed to work. This outcome violated the simulation's parameters. Several demanded that Jake be disqualified for breaking the rules. Queen Ciravel silenced them with a gesture. He did not break the rules. He simply refused to accept the assumptions built into the test. The second trial is passed, though I note that his victory came at terrible cost. Sometimes terrible costs are worth paying, Jake said quietly. Ask anyone who ever fought for their freedom. The third trial was the one Jake feared most. It required cultural knowledge he didn't possess. He stood in the throne room, surrounded by the entire royal court. The task was to perform the ceremony of worthiness, a complex ritual where a suitor proved their understanding of Velkari hierarchy and values. The proctor handed Jake a datapad with the ceremony's steps. He had 1 hour to study it. Jake read through the instructions, his heart sinking. The ceremony required him to prostrate himself before the queen, to recite declarations of his own unworthiness, to pledge absolute submission to the Velkari way of life. Every word, every gesture was designed to erase individuality in favor of hierarchy. He looked at Princess Larisha. She stood among the court, her expression carefully neutral. But he saw the conflict in her eyes. She wanted him to succeed, but she also knew what this trial demanded. It required him to become something he wasn't. The hour passed too quickly. Jake stood before Queen Ciravel with the entire court watching. He was supposed to kneel now, supposed to begin the ritual words. Instead, he remained standing. Your Majesty, he said clearly, I cannot perform this ceremony as written. Shocked whispers filled the throne room. Princess Larisha closed her eyes, believing he was giving up. I cannot perform it, Jake continued, because every word of it is a lie. I am not unworthy. I am not inferior to Velkari simply because I'm human. I don't believe in submission based on birth. I believe in respect between equals. Then you failed the third trial, the queen said coldly. You refuse to honor our ways. No, Your Majesty, Jake said firmly. I refuse to dishonor myself or my species by pretending our way of life is wrong. I respect the Velkari. I admire your technology, your culture, your achievements. But respect doesn't mean I must believe you are superior. True respect exists between equals, not between master and servant. He turned to face Princess Larisha, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. You asked me once what happiness meant. It means choosing your own path. It means finding someone who respects you as an equal. It means building a life together where both partners have value. I cannot prostrate myself before your mother and claim to be unworthy. The days following Jake's completion of the trials were strange and uncomfortable. The court didn't know how to react. He had technically failed one trial, but succeeded in 2 others in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The Velkari legal. Scholars argued endlessly about precedent and interpretation. Meanwhile, Jake and his crew remained in the palace as guests rather than prisoners, but their future remained uncertain. Jake found himself walking the palace gardens late one evening, unable to sleep. The Velkhari homeworld had 3 moons, and their combined light painted everything in shades of silver and blue. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to find Princess Lyra Shah approaching. "I come here when I need to think," she said quietly. "The garden is one of the few places in the palace where duty and protocol feel distant." "It's beautiful," Jake agreed. "Very different from Earth's gardens, but beautiful." They walked together in silence for a while. Finally, the princess spoke. "My mother has been very quiet since the trials ended. That worries me. When she is quiet, she is planning something." "Planning what?" "I do not know, but she did not reach her position by accepting defeat. If she believes our union threatens Velkhari society, she will find a way to prevent it." Princess Lyra Shah stopped walking and turned to face him. "Jake, are you certain about this path? You could return to Earth, resume your exploration career. Find a human partner who would not bring such complications. No one would blame you." Jake smiled slightly. "Are you trying to talk me out of this?" "I am trying to give you an escape, before things become more difficult." "Things are already difficult," Jake pointed out. "And I'm still here." "Why?" the princess asked, genuine confusion in her voice. "By any logical analysis, pursuing this relationship makes no sense. We are too different. The political complications are enormous. The biological barriers alone should be enough reason to abandon this idea, yet you persist. I need to understand why." Jake thought about how to explain it. "On Earth, we have this old saying, 'The heart wants what it wants.' It means that love doesn't follow logic. You can't make a spreadsheet of pros and cons and decide to fall in love, it just happens. But we barely know each other. We've spent weeks talking every day. You've told me about your life, your doubts, your dreams of something beyond your predetermined role. I've shared my hopes and fears with you. Maybe we don't know everything about each other, but we know enough." Jake paused. "And honestly, I admire your courage. You're willing to challenge your entire society's assumptions because you believe there's a better way. That's remarkable." Princess Lyra Shah's mandibles moved in the gesture he'd learned meant she was pleased but trying not to show it. "You are a strange being, Jake Morrison. You make me question everything I was taught. That should be disturbing, but instead, it feels like waking up from a long sleep." The moment was interrupted by a servant approaching quickly. "Princess, the Queen requests Captain Morrison's presence in her private chambers immediately." Jake and Princess Lyra Shah exchanged worried looks. A private audience with the Queen was unusual and potentially dangerous. "I will come with you," the princess said firmly. "The Queen requested the captain alone," the servant said nervously. "Then she will have to accept my presence as well," Princess Lyra Shah said with royal authority. "Lead the way." Queen Siravel's private chambers were surprisingly simple compared to the grand throne room. The walls were lined with screens showing news feeds from across the Velkhari Empire. Maps and strategic displays covered every surface. This was not a room for ceremony. This was where real decisions happened. The Queen dismissed her servants when Jake and her daughter entered. She waited until they were completely alone before speaking. "I told you to come alone, Captain Morrison." "I insisted on accompanying him," Princess Lyra Shah said quickly. "Of course you did." The Queen gestured for them to sit. "I suppose it saves me from repeating myself. I need to show you both something." She activated a holographic display. Images began flowing across it, showing scenes from across the Velkhari Empire. In one city, young Velkhari were gathered in large groups, discussing ideas. In another, workers were leaving their assigned posts to explore different occupations. In a third, artists were creating works that violated traditional forms. "This is happening in every major population center," the Queen said quietly. "Your story has spread, Captain Morrison. The human who chose his own path and challenged the trials. The princess who demanded the right to choose her own mate. It has become a symbol. The lower castes are questioning their predetermined roles. Young Velkhari are refusing their genetic assignments. Our carefully ordered society is beginning to fracture." Jake felt his stomach sink. Your Majesty, I never intended— Intentions are irrelevant, the Queen interrupted. Impact is what matters. Our society has been stable for millennia because everyone accepted their place. Now, you have introduced doubt. Doubt leads to chaos. Chaos leads to collapse. Princess Lyra Shah leaned forward. Or doubt leads to growth, Mother. Maybe our society has been stable because it was stagnant. Maybe we've been so focused on maintaining order that we forgot to evolve. Easy words from someone who has never seen true chaos, the Queen said sharply. Then her voice softened slightly. But not entirely wrong. I have been studying human history since your arrival, Captain Morrison. Your species has experienced terrible wars, famines, disasters. Yet you persist. You adapt. You grow. And I have been forced to acknowledge something uncomfortable. She pulled up another display, this one showing comparative data. The Velkari Empire has not produced a significant technological innovation in 500 years. We have not expanded our territory in 1,000 years. We have not created new art forms in even longer. We maintain what we have built, but we build nothing new. We are a museum civilization, perfectly preserving ourselves while the galaxy changes around us. Jake remained silent, sensing that the Queen needed to work through this herself. I had a choice once, the Queen said suddenly, her voice quiet. Before I became Queen, I was assigned to mate with the genetically optimal partner for producing royal heirs. But I loved someone else, someone unsuitable, a lower caste scientist who made me laugh and challenged my thinking. Princess Lyra Shah's eyes widened. Mother, you never told me this. Why would I? I made the proper choice. I mated as assigned, produced heirs according to genetic optimization. My unsuitable love was reassigned to a distant research station where I would never see him again. I became an exemplary queen by crushing every personal desire I ever had. Queen Ciravel looked directly at her daughter, and I have spent every day since wondering what life I might have lived if I'd been brave enough to choose differently. The room fell silent. Jake finally understood why the Queen seemed so conflicted. She wasn't just protecting her society. She was protecting the choice she made by ensuring no one else could make a different choice. If she allowed her daughter to choose love over duty, it would mean her own sacrifice had been unnecessary. I cannot allow your marriage, the Queen said finally. Not because you failed the trials, Captain Morrison. Honestly, your performance was more impressive than I care to admit, but because your union would destroy everything I have sacrificed to maintain. If I permit my daughter to choose her own path, then I must acknowledge that I could have chosen my own path. That admission would break me. So you're keeping me imprisoned in your past, Princess Lyra Shah said, her voice rising. My happiness must be sacrificed to justify your unhappiness. It is not that simple. It is exactly that simple. The princess stood abruptly. You made your choice, Mother. You have lived with it. But you cannot force me to make the same choice to feel better about yours. That is not love. That is control. Queen Ciravel also stood, her larger frame making her imposing. I am trying to protect you from a lifetime of regret. No, you are trying to protect yourself from acknowledging your own regret. The words hung in the air like weapons. Jake saw real pain in the Queen's eyes. Finally, she spoke again, her voice carefully controlled. I will make you an offer. One final chance for everyone to get what they need. She turned to Jake. Our scientists can modify your genetics, transform you into a Velkari hybrid. You would retain your memories and personality but gain our physical characteristics, our longer lifespan, our biological compatibility with my daughter. You could marry her and live as one of us. Your difference would be erased and my daughter would have her chosen mate. Jake felt cold. You want me to stop being human. I want you to become something that fits within our society, the Queen corrected. Is that not a fair compromise? You gain the princess. She gains you. And our social order is preserved because you will be Velkari, not human. What if I refuse? Jake asked quietly. Then you will return to human space immediately. And my daughter will be assigned to her proper genetic match within the month. She will do her duty, bear heirs according to optimization, and forget this foolish dream of choice and love. Princess Lyra Shah looked at Jake, her expression desperate. Jake, maybe you should consider— No, Jake said firmly. He looked at the Queen. Your Majesty, with respect, your offer is poison. If I become Velkari to marry your daughter, then I— Jake walked through the palace corridors alone, his mind spinning with impossible choices. Become something he wasn't to stay with the woman he loved, or remain himself and lose her forever. Neither option felt right. Both felt like defeat. He found his crew in their shared quarters. Lisa was reviewing star charts, probably planning their route back to human space. Ben was repairing some equipment, his hands busy while his mind worked through problems. Amy was making notes about Velkari biology, always the scientist even in crisis. How did it go with the Queen? Lisa asked, looking up from her work. Jake sat down heavily and explained the Queen's offer. His crew listened in silence until he finished. Then they all started talking at once, offering advice and opinions. Finally, Ben held up his hand for quiet. This is Jake's choice to make, Ben said firmly. But I want to say something. Jake, we became explorers to build bridges between species. Sometimes building a bridge requires personal sacrifice. No, Amy interrupted. Sometimes building a bridge means showing other species who we truly are. If Jake changes himself to fit their expectations, what message does that send? That humans aren't good enough as we are? But if he walks away, Princess Lyra Shah loses everything, Lisa pointed out. She challenged her entire society for him. Doesn't he owe her something?
He owes her honesty, Amy said.
Not transformation. Real love accepts people as they are. Jake appreciated their perspectives, but he knew the decision was ultimately his. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the alien landscape. 3 moons hung in the sky, beautiful and strange. He thought about Earth's single moon, about home, about who he was. A small sound made him turn. A young Velkari servant stood in the doorway, nervous and uncertain. Captain Morrison, may I speak with you? Of course. Come in. The servant entered hesitantly. He was smaller than most Velkari, with lighter plating that suggested youth. I'm called Kelvrin. I was assigned to the servant caste based on my genetic analysis 3 years ago. It is my function, my purpose, my life. Okay, Jake said gently, wondering where this was going. But I heard your story, Kelvrin continued, his words coming faster now. How you chose your own path. How you refused to accept predetermined outcomes. How you completed the trials not by following the rules but by finding new ways. And I started to wonder, what if I could choose too? What would you choose? Jake asked. I don't know, Kelvrin admitted. That's the terrifying part. I have spent my whole life being told exactly what I should do. The idea of choosing frightens me. But it also excites me. Is that the word? I think I might want to be a teacher. Or maybe an artist. Or perhaps something I haven't even imagined yet. The possibility is overwhelming. Jake felt the weight of what this young Velkari was saying. His actions had consequences beyond his personal situation. People were watching, learning, hoping. Can I tell you something? Kelvrin said quietly. If you stop being human to save the princess, then your message dies with your transformation. We need to see that being different is not being wrong. We need to see that you can stand up for who you are, even when it costs you everything. Because if you can do that, maybe we can too. After Kelvrin left, Jake sat in silence for a long time. His crew gave him space. Finally, he knew what he had to do. It wasn't the choice he wanted. It hurt more than he could express. But it was the right choice. He found Princess Lyra Shah in the garden where they had walked before. She stood alone among the alien flowers, her posture speaking of deep sadness. When she heard him approach, she didn't turn around. You have decided, she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Yes, you will return to human space. I have to, Jake said, his voice rough with emotion. Not because I don't love you, but because I do, and because I love the possibility you've awakened in your people. If I transform myself to fit into your world, I prove that different is wrong, that humans must stop being human to be acceptable. Every young Velkari who is starting to question their predetermined path would learn the wrong lesson. Princess Lyra Shah turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. Velkari weren't supposed to cry. Another rule she was breaking. So I lose you to save people I don't even know. No, you lose me to save the future you believe in. The one where Valkyrie get to choose. Where they can be uncertain and scared and brave all at once. That future needs to see that being different has value. That compromise isn't always the answer. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone remain who they truly are. I hate this, she said, her voice breaking. I hate that being right feels so much like losing. Me too. Jake moved closer, taking her hands in his. But I think this is what real love looks like sometimes. Not the fairy tale where everything works out perfectly, but the messy, complicated kind where you want the best for each other, even when the best means walking different paths. They stood together in the garden, holding each other while the three moons watched overhead. Finally, Princess Lyrisha pulled back. If you're going to make this sacrifice meaningful, then I must make mine. I cannot let you be the only one with courage. Before Jake could ask what she meant, she turned and walked quickly toward the palace. He followed, confused and concerned. She led him directly to the throne room where Queen Siravel was meeting with advisors. The princess didn't wait for permission to speak. Mother, I renounce my claim to the throne, she announced loudly, her voice carrying through the grand chamber. I renounce my royal status, my predetermined path, and my assigned genetic match. I choose Jake Morrison, humanity's way, and an uncertain future over the certainty you offer. The throne room erupted in chaos. Advisors shouted. Guards moved forward uncertainly. Queen Siravel stood slowly, her expression shocked. You cannot. I can and I am, Princess Lyrisha said firmly. You gave me a choice, Mother. Accept my assigned fate or lose everything. I choose to lose everything. Because losing everything while remaining true to myself is better than keeping everything by becoming something I'm not. The queen stared at her daughter for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she began to laugh. It was a strange sound, rusty from disuse. You are braver than I ever was. Braver than I taught you to be. Braver than this empire deserves. She turned to face the assembled court. For 3,000 years, we have bred certainty and called it wisdom. We have eliminated choice and called it perfection. But we have also eliminated adaptation, creativity, and growth. We face new galactic challenges with old genetic programming. Perhaps uncertainty is not weakness but evolution. Queen Siravel raised her hand for silence. The court immediately quieted. The trials are complete. Captain Jake Morrison has demonstrated strategic excellence, endurance beyond physical limitation, and commitment to principles over convenience. More importantly, he has inspired the courage to choose. These are worthy qualities. She paused, her next words clearly difficult. My daughter may retain her royal status while choosing her own path. The marriage will proceed under both Valkyrie and human customs, a symbolic blending of two philosophies. The court exploded with protests. The queen silenced them with a gesture. Furthermore, I am establishing a colony world where Valkyrie citizens may volunteer to live outside the caste system, free to choose their roles. It is an experiment. It may fail, but we will learn from either outcome. She looked at her daughter with an expression of mixed pride and grief. You asked me who that human was. You replied he was the man you would wed. Now I ask you, who will you become? Someone I choose to be, Mother, Princess Lyrisha answered, her voice strong despite her tears. Isn't that what he taught us? The wedding took place on a neutral moon between human and Valkyrie space. The location was symbolic, a place that belonged to neither species but could be shared by both. Dozens of species sent representatives, all curious about this unprecedented union. The ceremony was chaotic and beautiful. Human music mixed with Valkyrie harmonic frequencies. Traditional Valkyrie rituals were adapted to include concepts of choice and partnership. Jake wore his captain's uniform, polished and formal. Princess Lyrisha wore modified royal garments that honored tradition while expressing personal choice. When they exchanged vows, they spoke as equals. Not a genetic match fulfilling social contracts, but two individuals choosing each other despite every difficulty. Jake promised to always see her as a person with her own dreams and fears, not just a princess or a Valkyrie. Princess Lyrisha promised to honor his humanity while building something new together. Lisa, Ben, and Amy stood as Jake's witnesses. They had argued with him, questioned him, supported him, and ultimately stood by his choice. Now they watched him marry someone from another species and smiled through their own tears. Queen Siravel attended, sitting beside human ambassador Claire Martinez. During the celebration, The Queen watched her daughter dance with her human husband. The movements were awkward at first, each trying to match the other's rhythm. But they were learning, adapting, growing together. "Ambassador Martinez," the Queen said quietly, "do all humans live with such uncertainty, never knowing if their choices are correct?" "Every day, Your Majesty," Claire replied. "It's terrifying and wonderful. That's what makes our choices meaningful. I think I am beginning to understand why humans explore,